Welcome to The Passion Pod with your host, Chris Johnson. Thanks for joining us. Now sit back, relax, and enjoy the feature presentation.
Season 2, Episode 9.
Welcome back, friends, for our most reinvented episode so far. Today, we travel to the sunny city of Santa Cruz, California. From big brothers and big sisters to mentoring up-and-coming skateboarders in the ever-growing skate industry, welcome today's guest, once professional skateboarder for World Industries, now the brand manager for Santa Cruz Skateboards, among a bunch of other things, Andrew Cannon.
Thank you. I like the other things thing. I think that makes a lot of sense.
You do a lot, yeah. Well, you do a lot of right? So, I mean, I announced like my little local contest, but you've announced contest for like a bunch of stuff, right?
Yeah, I do. I do like street league stuff. I do tour stuff. I haven't been doing X Games stuff lately, just because I'm kind of changing all that. And I do Tampa. And
are you doing the Olympics?
I'm not sure.
Oh, you might do the Olympics.
Well, so I talked to somebody that I know, and they kind of were like, I don't know how it all works. It's so complex. I'm not doing TV or any of that stuff, but apparently like each country gets to bring an announcer and a DJ or something like that.
Okay.
So he said my name was on the list for announcing, but I don't know if that means that my name's on a list with like 40 other people.
Sure.
And maybe I get picked, or if he's like, oh no, we're just taking you. I didn't want to pry.
Yeah.
But I was like, oh, so is there potential I could go to Tokyo? And he was like, yeah, like kind of laughed about it. And I was like, okay, well, we'll see. Yeah, I mean, my whole outlook's been like, I'm like totally pro the Olympics. I think it's rad for skating.
It's just going to blow the industry up. Anyone who's arguing it, I think, is being pessimistic.
Yeah, I mean, I always say that just anyone who's arguing it, it sounds a little bit radical to say, but it's like, that's the same as like white privilege. It's basically like, oh, well, I don't want skateboarding to be in the Olympics because that's going to make it whack. And you're like, listen, skateboarding isn't yours. It's not mine. But what it's going to do is it's going to open it up for all these people in the world. And that's special. And so just because you have the opportunity to be a skateboarder, you have that privilege. And so I look at it the same way. It's just like, you know, we're seeing these emerging markets in Asia, and all these people are starting to skateboard. And like, yeah, people might get into it because of the Olympics, but you look online, you watch a skate video, and you're like, holy shit, skateboarding is so cool. I want to do that. And maybe you don't want to go skate in a contest. And that immediately changes the way you look. And the thing is, everybody can connect with that feeling once you get on a skateboard. So to me, I'm like, I think it's a little bit lame to just put that aside, because most of the time it's a bunch of people that have been skateboarding for a long time, and it's like skateboarding's been accepted and it's been easy to find skateboards and all that stuff, and it's like it's going to unlock it for the world, and that's special.
People need to look at what the other examples are too. Like, be mature for a second, sit back, think like, when did you start skateboarding? Well, realistically, a lot of people started because of some kind of media thing, right?
Exactly.
Whether it was Rocket Power, or it was, for me, the Tony Hawk video games. When the first game came out was like the time frame I started skating, or when Bam was all of a sudden on TV with Viva La Bam, and then it was, Robin Big. But honestly, a lot of those times, those media things are the influencers for how you discover skateboarding in the first place. And then you discover what's actually cool, or whatever you identify as cool later on. You know what I'm saying? But that's like with almost anything. That's with art, like illustration. You can see that with singing. Like, you first listen to pop music a lot of times because that's what's on the radio. And then later on, all of a sudden, you're like listening to metal and because you discover what you actually like. So yeah, skateboarding isn't ours. You're very much right. And I think for the industry, yeah, as any industry gets bigger, there's going to be things you don't like about it that are getting bigger, but everything you like about it as well is going to get bigger. So it's just going to open it up to a lot more people. For me, I'm really excited about it, especially because I have two girls, and women's skateboarding is now finally starting to pop off a little bit, but it's still like a handful of girls that anybody even knows who they are. You know what I mean? Which sucks. Nora's getting some light, and Lizzie and stuff, but not many girls skate. Well, if you look at women's snowboarding, it was kind of the same way. Like, there weren't very many women snowboarding until the Olympics. And then girls saw, oh, there's other girls doing it, when they were little. And then the next time they went to go skiing or whatever, they were like, maybe I'll go snowboarding, So I think the same thing will happen with skateboarding with women. And I'm really hoping, just because I'm not going to be that coach dad, but I want to go to the skate park with my kids. Like, that would be really cool. So just to get back quick, I kind of know what you do, but out in Eau Claire, Wisconsin, people don't know what you do. Not that that's where the only people are listening, but you are the brand manager for Santa Cruz. What else do you do currently?
Well, so I'm the brand manager for Santa Cruz, and I've been doing this for almost 6 years. And then I do some contest announcing as well. Like, are you talking about like work stuff or like just life stuff?
Well, I mean, you can go into both, but yeah, well, let's stick with work stuff right now.
Yeah, so I do contest announcing for Street League. I'll do tour stuff. Sometimes I'll do X Games stuff. I'll do like mano a mano, Skatepark of Tampa. Like sometimes I'll do a damn am. I haven't been doing as many lately just because work is so busy that I don't have the time to go do the damn am events. But I always do Tampa Am, Tampa Pro. Yeah, just a bunch of talking.
Cool. What's the quick backstory of like what you did? Like you were a professional skateboarder, but I mean, if you YouTube Andrew Cannon, you see like your day in the life thing, and like you went to school for teaching at some point. And there's a whole free lunch stuff talking about sticky fingers, and there's a lot of stuff that's going on. So what was like the really quick summary of what you did before what you're currently doing?
We'll try to be as quick as possible, but basically grew up in Pennsylvania, always wanted to be a pro skateboarder. Moved out to Arizona after I tore my ACL because I had a conversation with somebody who like sponsored me at the time, and they were like, honestly, I don't think it's going to work. I think you should go to school. And it hurt a lot at the time. But it was the raddest conversation because it got me to start thinking about that. Went to school in Westchester, Pennsylvania for a year, got into some trouble being drunk and stupid. Just realized I needed to get out of there. I moved out to Arizona and I just felt I was in love with that place from going to Phoenix Am. Basically, I just was skating. And then basically what was funny was I was getting some boards from Leticia at Consolidated, and they were super nice to me. And then Matt Price, who was a photographer for Skateboard Mag at the time, but also became just a really good friend. We were talking at some point, and I don't know how it came up, but he just knew that I grew up on Flamboyant, Wet Willie, and loved that. Like all of us did. Like our whole crew was just like nerdy skateboard.
Yeah, I'm not that much younger, so the same time frame of like sketching at school, like the little Flamboy thing, and all the little characters, the Blind Reaper, like
So I grew up on that stuff, and I just thought that was rad. And World Industries had this weird existence at that time. Like it had already been bastardized from Dwindle, and they were making shoes. And so Matt was like, "Oh, dude, my friend RP works over there. Like, I'll just hit him up and send you some footage, or send him footage." And so he sent footage to RP, and I ended up going to Skate for World, and I was getting flowed from those dudes. And I just kind of like, I kept going and pushing, and and I ended up turning pro for those guys. And it's funny, we actually had a team meeting here yesterday with like the whole Santa Cruz team. And I kind of told this little story about how, because I'll talk about my pro career, but I'm not proud of it because, this is kind of what I said to everybody yesterday was that as much as I had fun and I got to do the things that I wanted to do, like I wanted to travel the world, that was kind of my goal. My output was never up to par with what it should have been. Because I had torn my ACL. And so after I had torn my ACL, years later, I just kind of changed the way that I skated. Because when I grew up, I was really into skating handrails and jumping down. And when I tore my ACL, I was like, ooh, maybe I'm going to chill out on that. And I always skated ledges and stuff like that. But then I just turned into one of those dudes that was like just skating ledges and manuals and banks and like that. And it just wasn't, it was fun, and I have a ton of patience. So I can go try a trick 4 days in a row and be like, oh, I still didn't get it. It's cool. I'll go back. Like, I don't care about that because I'm so goal oriented. So there were like certain tricks that I did that I am legit proud of because they were crazy hard, but my overall output, I'm super not proud of. And so I was kind of telling that to everybody yesterday was like, I went like 4 years as a pro skateboarder putting out stuff, and nothing that I put out, my last part that I put out, I was like kind of psyched on, there was some stuff in there. I was like, oh, cool. I'm, trying, but now I'm here at 34, like, I gotta film a video part because I just never put out anything that made me feel like this is a good showcase of who I am. Like since I was 19, like literally I'm like, I'm gonna try to film a video part this year. I miss the other shit I have going because I just was never proud of it. But it was a really fun experience, and I met a lot of great people, and I had a lot of fun. But I just never put forth as much, not effort because the effort was there. My standards were. And being on the other side of the desk now really puts that into perspective, which is rad.
I think it's one of the reasons it's really important to have good mentors around you, people who have kind of been through that stuff. That's thing that I think is really cool about the skateboarding industry is that it seems like at most of these places, I was at Deluxe yesterday and stuff, pretty much everybody skates, who works at the company. So they all like understand how things work. And it's really cool when you see people like, Art Osari or Levi Brown or whatever, these dudes that were pro and then like stuck around with their teams and stuff. And now like they're still involved in the skateboard industry. So it's kind of like being pro because you're still traveling around, hanging out with the same people and doing the same types of things. But then you're in the position to like talk to the people like Henry Gartland and be like, hey man, you're 20, like now's your time. Don't turn 21 next year and pile out, please. Because like you will regret it. You know, once you hit 30, all of a sudden it's a lot harder to jump down stuff unless you're like Reynolds, which like you're just not going to be. Sorry. Well, maybe, you know, maybe Henry Gartland, he's been doing some crazy nose blunts and stuff. But
what's cool on that same note is like my boss is Jeff Kendall, and Jeff Kendall's like legendary 80s vert pro for Santa Cruz. And it's been so rad to have that because Jeff called it quits on his career. He was like, I'm done, I'm working, which I think is rad. And what's been awesome is in this whole process, I mean, when I got here, they basically handed me the keys and were like, all right, good luck, you know, we'll be here. But it was nuts. And Jeff's always been such a great mentor and such a great person to learn from because he gets it. And so whether we agree or we don't agree on certain things, it doesn't matter because I look at him and I go, you get it. Like, he's so talented as a skateboarder. I mean, and everything he is, he's one of those guys, you know? But it just makes that respect so much easier. You never have that, like, do you really get it? It's like, yeah, you get it.
Dude,
absolutely.
That's why the podcast works so well for me. You know, I think I'm the right person to be doing this because I already have, you know, it's almost not that like 6 years, and I'm not even at that point. That'll be April, but I'm at almost 6 years of entrepreneurship on my own. And that's where all of a sudden you garner that mutual respect with people. You know, when I get to sit down and talk with somebody like you, it's not so much like, well, you're not like pro anymore, so you're not a superstar. Sorry, but you are pretty cool.
And I wasn't superstar
but you know what I mean? Like, I can sit down with people like you or the other guests and stuff and not feel like I'm this awkward like kid that's like interviewing these super crazy people, because we have like this similar life experience of we both, well, one, we're both adults, but we both are pursuing a career based on things that we really, really enjoy. So we had to face the same kind of hardships and stuff, like through different things. We had like kind of similar paths, you know what I mean? It's obvious to me that we have a very similar mindset of like mentoring other people. Like, we want to be the people that help these kids grow up, and we do it in different ways. You've been around shops plenty to know that like shop owners, that's kind of what a lot of them do. You know what I mean? They're the big brother, dad type, whatever person in the skateboarding community who kind of like, yeah, this is when you should go skate this spot. Like, no, don't be smoking weed, or, you know, whatever. Like, that's kind of what we do. You obviously do that a lot with like Santa Cruz. What are some of the other things that you find motivating about what you do outside of mentoring all the kids like coming up?
Well, before we do that, I don't know if he'll ever hear it, but I got to say thanks to Dave Fairman, because Fairman Skate Shop's the shop I rode for forever. I got a Fairman's tattoo. Dave mentored me. He totally took me under his wing, and I owe that dude. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for Dave. But the other things that kind of get me psyched on the job, like my sort of like North Star in all of this is being a kid from Pennsylvania, starting skateboarding at 11, and then being like, it's corny, it saved my life. It made me the person I am. It always guided me with my decisions, and I'm so lucky to have that in life, because a lot of people are just lost. They're like, I don't know what the I want to do. I don't know where I want to be. I don't know any of that. And skateboarding was always there to help me make those decisions. Like, whether or not, like, I went to school for education. Am I teaching? No. I learned a lot of great stuff that is applicable within my job and with my careers that I'm doing. But at the same time, like, skateboarding was the reason I went to Arizona State. And it's rad because I went there because of skateboarding. My wife and I met. I mean, I knew her from before, but we got together. Now I got 3 kids. It's like, skateboarding has always been that thing that helped me to get from point A to B to C, and then it'll just take me to, oh, I died. Well, skateboarding was there for all of it in some capacity, So for me, my thing is I just want to make skateboarding accessible, like I want to make it a comfortable place for people to come to, because look, I like a lot of brands in skating. Some of the brands that, like would never want me wearing their clothes or all that stuff. Like, I think they're cool, but they're not like, hey guys, here's the door, welcome in. You know what I mean? Like, come be a part of this. I want Santa Cruz to be that. Like, I want Santa Cruz to be the brand that if someone's going to enter into skating, they can feel comfortable coming to they can look on our Instagram and they're not going to be like, oh my God, what is this? And I want them to, look at our output on YouTube and stuff like that and feel comfortable being like, wow, those are good people, and as cheesy as it sounds, I want parents and I want aunts and uncles and grandparents to be able to look at it. I mean, we want to be authentic. Like, I don't care if people are partying and stuff like that, to an extent, because it has to be real. It has to be like, this is a genuine experience that you're sharing. But I want people to get excited and inspired by that, to hopefully do that with friends, even if it's not like on a skate tour, because not everybody can get sponsored. But I definitely want people to have that opportunity to be like, oh, wow, I saw those guys do it, or gals. I want to go do it too.
That's what good skate shops do. Again,
Exactly.
in relation, that's what good skate shops do. They carry certain brand, like they carry a lot of different things, right? But the skate shops that don't survive are the ones that cool guy you. You go in and you got to be part of that cool kid group to be able to buy their stuff or support their stuff or skate with them or whatever. And it's just this weird ego thing, man. Like skateboarding, I guess maybe it's just the parental instinct, but skateboarding is for the kids. Like that's when it was most important to me. That's when it was most valuable to like my progression within my life. Now it's just available for me, which is rad. And it's like this secret little club throughout the whole world of friends and stuff. It's really rad. You know what I mean? It's kind of like a gang that you don't owe anything to or something. It's weird. But so you have this cool thing, but the good brands and like good shops are the ones that make skateboarding available for everybody. And you can still have things within that. You know what I mean? Like you can still have random graphics or something, maybe not random, but you can have a graphic come out that's less appropriate for a specific rider because that's what they want to do, with your main image still being something that's appropriate for everybody. All right. So to reach like whatever place you want in life, right? You have a goal. Say, I want to be the goal to be whatever, the person who replaces you after you get moved up to the next thing. There isn't like a direct trajectory. That just isn't how it works. If you think there's a specific path that you have to follow, like that's unfortunate. You should do it in the way that you want to do it. I think it's really cool that you went to school for education, because I went to school for pre-business and pretty quickly was like, it's not like I can't learn anything from this, but this isn't the path I personally want to take. I think when you're younger, you feel like you have to commit to something. Like you have this idea, I want to be a pro skater, so I'm 100% into it. Or like whatever, you think like, if I'm going to be a teacher, if I'm going to invest all this money, then I have to be a teacher. But all those life experiences that you have, whether it's being a pro skateboarder, for me, I sold jewelry and stuff before I like opened my skate shop. Those things are really helpful stepping stones towards whatever that career is. Through teaching, I'm sure what you learned in that has really helped you to teach people like Henry coming up. You know what I mean? You like learn how to be a mentor. You were a big brother for a while, right? Big brothers, big sisters. So you learn through those different types of things. What are some of the things that you learned from those other experiences that you think have been like the most helpful so far?
Well, public speaking is definitely, and I was never worried about public speaking. I've always felt comfortable. Because, one of the things you brought up earlier that I didn't get a chance to comment on was like, at 6 years, you kind of like in this comfortable spot with entrepreneurship and stuff like that to be able to have conversations with people. The thing that I think all the time is that we're all the exact same. There's no difference between you and me and, anybody upstairs in, on the executive team, and there's Kanye West and none of that matters. The difference is like there's sort of a perceived excitement and then there's an ego. So when I used to fly a lot for, when I was skating, and people would be like, oh, what do you do? And I'd be like, oh, I'm a professional skateboarder. And they'd be like, are you famous? I'd be like, do you have any idea who I am? And they'd be like, no. And I was like, no, because everything is relative, like you can be like, oh my God, you know who that is? That's insane. So I know I'm getting off topic, but what I wanted to say on that one was just like, there's no difference between anybody and we're all the same. And that's the coolest thing in the world. I feel like that's the most empowering thing, because when I was a kid, I went to this Bane show, this band I love, and they talked about that. He was like, had a job at a furniture store. All these women were like these old rich women that were like, they would treat him like crap. And he told this story about how he was like, you cut me open, cut them open. We have the same heart. We bleed the same blood. We're all the same. And that stuck with me. I was 16 years old or 15. And it was just like, holy shit. And ever since, it's really resonated with me. It doesn't matter what color you are, who you love. It doesn't matter any of that stuff. It's like, we're all the exact same, and that's why I feel it's so important for us to all communicate, because that's really what's going to make the world better. But anyway, so yeah, I mean, public speaking from teaching was huge. If you can stand up in front of a class of high school kids that don't want to be there and talk to them about vocabulary and get through to them, it's like, you can talk to people about skateboarding. You can talk to people about, and especially if they have even the slightest bit of excitement. So definitely public speaking, organization, and follow through. I had a great mentor teacher when I was doing my student teaching. His name's Jack Kahn. Super smart, super hardworking. And what was rad was we got along right out the gate. I did stuff with his wife I had to do multiple mentorships. So I was under his wife for a minute, and she basically was like teaching and showed me how it worked. And she's like, honestly, I think you need to meet my husband because you guys would get along. So she like walked me down the hall. I walked in. He had a huge Iron Maiden poster on the wall. And I was like, whoa. And we totally hit it off. He's great. And so he taught me, how to be organized, how to be ahead of stuff. But also he didn't like allow me to get away with anything, you know? And I will never forget, and this is back when I was still drinking because it's been almost 10 years now, but I remember, and I never told him this, but I went and drank and I called out because I was hungover. And I remember he sat me down the next day and was like, hey, if you're sick, if you're not like shitting your pants, don't go calling out sick. Like, you're supposed to be here. There's a plan, all this stuff. And it was like, whoa, you know, it was like a pretty heavy moment, I think, just in life of like, dude, you can't, like, there's responsibility and you're supposed to be here kind of thing, you know. He was just a great mentor on that stuff. Like, he called it like it was. And he didn't beat around the bush as far as like, you know, telling me what I was doing right and what I was doing wrong, which was great. Because if you don't have people in your life like that, then you can't improve. So yeah, I think those were kind of the most important things, you know, is just being able to really articulate yourself and try to get your thoughts across. But also it just made me realize, like, you just have to have fun with stuff. You know, I mean, I always have fun, but especially in teaching, it's like, you got to have fun with it. You
have to care about what you're doing, you know, and obviously, like, if you're having fun, you care about what you're doing as well. But that can be in a lot of different ways. It's in general about like being passionate about it, which is, of course, like the name of my shop and it's whatever. But if you're passionate about it, that shows through. And then the people actually give a shit what you're saying, totally. Whether it's kids or whatever else. I think that's interesting. You know, with skateboarding, people always say that like skateboarding taught me everything. And I'm not bitter about skateboarding. I love skateboarding. I still skate all the time. You don't learn everything from skateboarding. You learn a lot of shitty habits. You learn a lot of good ones, but you do learn some bad ones. And skateboarding being a totally individual thing on your own time makes it really hard for you to work with others a lot of times because you don't work with others throughout your skateboarding. Maybe you film a video part or whatever, but for the most part, it's like, I have a trick I want to do at this spot and I'm going to take my turn and time to do it however long it takes, whatever pace I want to go. And that's great because it teaches you like, you can accomplish whatever you want to do. It teaches you a lot of things. So I'm not negative, but organized sports jobs, you can learn a lot of things from those, you know, that skateboarders a lot of times lack because they're so focused on doing what skateboarding is. But realistically, like, if you want to be successful in the world in the majority of things, you have to learn how to work with others. Even if you're an entrepreneur like myself, I'm still reliant completely on whether or not people come to my store. Like, I'm essentially working with them. Otherwise, I'm not going to exist. If I just open my doors, it doesn't mean people are going to come buy stuff. You know, so it's important for people to recognize that you can learn lessons from all these other things. And it's fine. You can still be a course skateboarder and whatever, and then go be teaching or then go be doing any number of things. You could play golf. Like, it doesn't matter. You know, you learn things from all kinds of different stuff. So I don't know if you'll see this in your skateboarding, but people always talk about like style and like they recognize what they look like, you know, and everybody has kid style when they're growing up. I had kid style. Not everyone, most people. Eventually I evolved to dad style. You know what I mean? Where I'm not great. I have a couple like video parts in the shop videos. I'm not awful, but I'm comfortable on my board at least, you know, which shows through, which is nice. The one thing that like I thought of when I was watching your parts this morning was your push reminds me of Booznitz a lot. Have you ever had anyone say that?
I don't think so, but I'll take it.
It's a good compliment, right? So, well, when you push, it's kind of like a quick, fast, powerful push, and like the way you're hunched when you push, whatever. It reminded me of Dennis Booznitz, right? And your style also kind of reminds me of. So, I have two favorite skateboarders. One's Bobby Boris, for like obvious reasons because he's the man. And the other for also obvious reasons is Johnny Layton. But they both still have the same kind of like feel that your skateboarding has and the like kind of powerful like skating. Who's your favorite skateboarder or like a couple of them?
Growing up for me, it kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier about just like not of changing my skating. When I grew up, I wanted to skate like Mike Maldonado, like straight up. Maldonado's from the same town that I'm from. And just his toy machine parts were awesome. He would, you know, he'd skate ledges, he'd skate rails, he'd skate stairs, skated everything, but he had so much power. And so I think if I was going to say who would I want to skate like, it would be like Maldonado from those toy machine days because he was just the best. But I grew up loving Jerry Sue and Louis Barletta and like Mark Johnson. It's funny, like I loved a lot of the San Jose skaters, even though I was so far removed from it. But they made those tilt mode videos, and those were super fun, and I really like connected with that. And then PJ Ladd. PJ Ladd's just one of the greatest of all time. But it's kind of all over the place, you know. Like you mentioned, Johnny Layton and Bobby Warris. Like I like both of those dudes. I think both of them are great, you know.
They both have a mean switch tray.
Yeah.
So I love that you brought up tilt mode because I was DMing Louis and I want to get him on the show. He's like, man, I don't know. I have nothing to talk about. I'm like, shut the fuck up. You have so much to talk about. It's unreal. But anyways, I love that you brought that up because I watched your parts and I saw the skits. And this is one thing that I think kids don't understand. But in order to come up in an industry, you got to look at it from a business mind. Maybe that's just like how my brain works or whatever. But you're an advertising tool. You are an advertising tool for this company to make money. At the heart of it, that's what it is. You guys are friends and you have the same mission, and like there's all like really positive, fun, things about it. But ultimately, the reason that you're getting paid is hopefully to make more money for the company than they're paying you. You're all working together in that way. If you want to be professional in any kind of industry like music or like whatever, it's not all about your skill. You have to be good, but that's obvious. Everybody knows you have to be good. You have to be marketable. Mm-hmm. You have to be a marketable personality in some way or another. Sometimes it's that cool guy thing that like, oh, he's so cool. I can never talk to that person in like the FA camp. They're sick. I'm not knocking them. That's tight. Good for them. But a lot of times people like when they like something, it's because it's relatable, like that's why people love it when, celebrities are on SNL or something because they make fun of themselves. And now all of a sudden, like it's lighthearted and it's fun. Yeah. What advice would you give to people that are trying to come up? Like, obviously, like I'm saying, you have to have something marketable about yourself, but do you preach that to the younger dudes? Like find who you are?
Yeah, absolutely. We did a full on sort of storytelling workshop yesterday with the team because the big thing is we at Santa Cruz, we're trying to humanize the brand because it's really easy for a brand that's been around there's not many of them, but brand that's been around for so long to just be like, oh, it's just this brand. But really any brand is just the people behind it. You have the IP, you have like the logos, whatever. And then you obviously have the heritage, but at the same time, a brand is only as good as the people that work there. And I mean, we have an amazing group of people in-house and our team is wonderful, so we have a really great group of people that are tied to Santa Cruz. We try to make sure that everybody understands, like, be yourself, I think a really good example is, and Henry doesn't dye his hair anymore, but when Henry was like dyeing his hair all wild, like I had people hitting me up being like, yo, he needs to change his hair. That's like weird or whack or whatever. And I was like, you're so wrong. Like, you don't understand. That's what's so rad is Henry's being himself. He's being authentic. He's being real. And, you may not fit into the mold that you think skateboarding should be, but the odds are I was talking to like somebody my age or older or whatever that was like, I don't know, that's a little weird. And you're like, who gives a shit? You're old. Are you listening to the trap music and all that? Like, have you seen what people wear? Have you seen what people are about? Like, shut up. So, I mean, I think if anything, I just preach like authenticity, like be yourself, and whether that means you're going to do ridiculous skits or you're going to have crazy hair or whatever, it's like, just be yourself. And, at some point it might be like, hey, you know what? The person you are maybe doesn't align with our values or whatever. And that's fine, but I'd like to say like our squad does for sure. Yeah. But yeah, it is important. Everything's storytelling, everything's marketing, everything's, just have fun.
Yeah. Ultimately, like if you're trying to be somebody else, whoever that person is going to be better at doing it than you. Yeah. So you should be yourself because you'll be the best version of you. Nobody else can be you. You know what I mean? It's better to just play to your strengths in that regard. And with how big skateboarding has gotten, there is now a niche for anybody, anything you can possibly be into. There is a brand that like you would fit their marketing strategy. So if you're good and you're being yourself, and yes, you have to try like, you still have to like do a little bit of networking and try to go to contests and like be proactive. But if you're good, you're yourself and you're doing those types of things, you're going to get discovered with the way Instagram works now. Mm-hmm. Like people will find you. So absolutely. Yeah. Just be yourself.
There's never been a cooler time to be a skateboarder. For sure. Because you can be anybody. Yeah. I love it.
What are some of the more difficult things that you have to deal with or work around? Not to be like immediately like, well, there's too many companies and it's oversaturated or whatever, but like what are some of the problems that you have to face that are a little bit difficult with today's day and age?
I think it's easy to point out problems, but I'm not really that kind of person. I'm more about like, okay, well, let's talk about opportunities because, you can sit here and you can focus on a problem. And unless the problem is like, okay, how do we reach more people? Like, let's just say that, for instance, the problem we're talking about is it's really hard to get organic reach through your social media. Okay. And you're like, okay, cool. Because this is a brand, Facebook and Google or whatever, they don't want to allow you to have your audience seen because they can take some money from you to be like, oh, well, you can reach 20,000 people if you pay $10. Like if that's the problem, okay, then what's the solution? You know, you're like, all right, well, we've got to look at alternatives. And I've listened to all kinds of marketing stuff. And like, you know, people are like, oh, focus on your email list, focus on this, things that you can control, you know, that you're not like, oh, we're living on this, we're renting on this property, you know, that we don't own. So I don't know. I mean,
well, I would agree with you.
Right now,
So
we're in a pretty cool time.
I think what's really cool about it is as these new problems come up, everybody's facing them, which means not everyone has it figured out. So if you're willing to be proactive and look into it and try new things, it's just going to help you evolve or your company evolve. And it kind of just opens up more opportunities if anything else. You know what I mean? Because it's not like the world wants business to fail. So that's not really the point. It's everyone's trying to get their piece in America, but still they're not trying to make it fail. So when something comes up that becomes like presents a challenge, now all of a sudden we can all work together and figure out different ways around it. So it doesn't have to be like a super negative thing anyways. For myself, it's like the internet, right? So e-commerce is super hard for local shops to compete with. That's like a big challenge that we have. But that kind of just like reinforces the mentality of skate shops, you need to be community hubs.
Exactly.
Like it forces that to like realize people aren't just coming to your store and giving you money anymore. It doesn't work that way. And it's going to weed out all the people that aren't like don't care about it as much. And it's going to make all these local stores put so much more effort into the community building side of it that it's going to benefit everybody. Yeah. So yeah, I agree with you. Like I don't like to focus on negative stuff and you know, there's always going to be problems, but there's a lot of opportunities that come up, which is super, super sick from that.
I mean, I try to be realistic about all of it, you know, but for us, we're just in such a cool moment, you know, especially with Santa Cruz, we're just in a really cool moment.
You guys are doing really well. Like it's working. With how it's going. I know like everyone's talked about it in the industry, not to cut you off, but everybody's talked about it in the industry that Santa Cruz was like not a flagship company, you know, a while ago, however many years ago, say 3-4 years ago. It still existed. It had its like place, but the young people weren't getting into it. That's not where it was. It didn't have a lot of brand identity anymore that was relevant. And then all of a sudden, the Till the End videos came out and stuff. And you got Henry and you got Mario, you got Blake, you got whatever, a lot of people, Tom Asta. You have like this whole diverse team that, you know, you make the marketing materials like the videos and they are cohesive all of a sudden. You know what I mean? It has a brand identity again and kids want to ride for that company because that's what you have to do. You have to maintain relevancy through things like that. Like looking at Baker, Andrew Reynolds is one of the very few people that has like found a specific thing and been able to carry it for as long as he has just because he discovers talent and is able to make that work. But hardly anyone does that. It's usually based on like which pro owns the company at the time and if they're still relevant. And then once they're not relevant, it's gone. You know what I mean? But Santa Cruz, recently it's reinvented and you guys got everybody. Fucking sick to see like you got Fabiana just went pro. So now like you have that. You got contest kids, but then you have European dudes that are killing it. There's like, I could see how a lot of people could find something within the brand to identify with that makes it so welcoming to like the masses. You know what I mean?
And that's definitely been the goal. There's certain brands where when you look at it, you're like, I just feel like I'm seeing carbon copies of, you know, this person or that person. And that doesn't make a lot of sense. You know, you want to have a diverse group of people because if you're interested in a certain type of skating and you don't have that on your team, it's like, oh, well, then nobody cares about your brand. But to say that, and I appreciate the kind words on that. But with Santa Cruz, the foundation was laid even back as far as like when they were doing The Simpsons and Star Wars. Because my belief on this is that although we've done a lot on the core skate side, to get the brand in a position where it is right now, as far as like being so aligned with pop culture and making it cool and making it accessible to non-skateboarders. Because realistically, when you go to the mall, you know, or you're like out in Disney or wherever, and you see people wearing Santa Cruz, a lot of them aren't skateboarders. But because we've done all these licensing projects, I believe that it has made the brand more relevant to an audience that goes, oh, cool. I see Santa Cruz because I saw it with Star Wars, or I saw it with Turtles, or I saw that Mars Attacks Garbage Pail Kids thing, whatever. Like, I think that those connections have also made it really strong. And then to have the stuff on the core side to back it up has made it a lot better.
Yeah, I mean, that is like the same thing as the Olympics in that way. Of like, you're just bringing it to more people to be able to see it. People may discover it through something like The Simpsons when they don't even skate. But when they do want to start skating, Santa Cruz is going to click in their brain. And now, like, that's the company they're going to look to. So by the time this episode comes out, because we're recording this in January when I'm traveling, but the social media for this podcast is going to be massive by this point. You know, way bigger than yours is personally, I hope. That's my goal because that means I'm doing it really well.
Yeah.
And then I can like hit you up and be like, hey, dog, if you need something, you let me know. No, but so hopefully I'm going to bring a bunch more people that didn't follow you prior. You know, you were Santa Cruz. But now they're going to be following you after this. What can people kind of expect moving forward in the next like year, 2 years? Like what are you currently working on? What's like the future, I guess, holding?
So for Santa Cruz, basically sort of when we look at the brand in 2020, we really are trying to narrow our focus. I mean, this may not seem like we're narrowing it, but basically just going like, okay, what is the brand about? The brand is about skateboarding. It's about art. It's about music. And so we're going to really lean in on each piece of those and make sure that we're kind of like hitting different pieces. So you'll see more music-based pieces that we start doing, working with artists, working with bands, stuff like that. Obviously, we want to tie them to skateboarding, at least in the beginning. And then over time, just people that are psyched on the brand, like we'll start doing more of that. I'm excited. We'll have some people turning pro. We just released these videos with all the young gang that skates for us called the Minions. And we still have one more episode to come out. That'll come out, I think, next week. And then, yeah, I mean, from Santa Cruz, there's so much stuff that's going to happen. And then, you know, for me in my position, I'm really excited about just trying to line everything up. I have this somewhat morbid view on life, and I'm constantly like, oh, I'm going to die. And I'm just really comfortable with that. I read this book called A Year to Live, and I'm like, metaphorically, I'll die on November 3rd of 2020. I'm like doing this whole journaling thing and like just trying to get life organized before, because it's this whole thing about like not being scared of death and everything. And so for me, I'm trying to get everything lined up just in case. I mean, I fly back and forth between Arizona and California like every week, and I'm constantly traveling and all over the place, and I ride bikes on the road all the time. And I mean, there's just like, you know, life is life. I don't hope that I die anytime soon, but at the same time, I want to get my life set up so that if I go, it's like Santa Cruz isn't like, oh, what are we going to do? Like, they're just like, not that they're like, oh, cool, Andrew's gone. But they're also like, cool, we could bring somebody in. This is the way everything's set up. And then if they've got ideas, then they'll make stuff happen, you know?
Right. So you die, they call me up.
Yeah.
Chris, you need to come somewhere warm because winter sucks. I'm like, yeah, winter does suck. All right, you're in.
Yeah,
no, I don't,
exactly.
It would be hard for me to work for anybody again at this point, honestly. But I have the same like kind of mentality. I kind of think I live by, or I try to live by the saying, I don't know where it's from somewhere, that is plan for tomorrow, but live for today. Mm-hmm. It's really important to not put yourself in a shitty position moving forward, but then also recognize that that position may never even happen.
Yeah. It
may never come. So you got to take advantage of the time that you are given. Both my parents had really significant health problems in their 50s, and I'm knocking on the door at 30 like, oh, damn, I might be like more than halfway done with my life already. I got to like handle the things that I want to handle. You know what I mean? Because that may or may not be around.
Every year I kind of like look at something and I go, okay, what do I want to focus on this year? So last year it was sleep, and I was like, all right, I want to get good sleep this year. And so I like measured on my watch. I make sure that I'm trying to get like between 7 and like 9 hours. And I've like tailored my life a lot in the last like 6 months around making sure I get enough sleep. And I feel like a completely different person, because for a long time I was like getting 6 hours of sleep, 5 hours of sleep. I was burning the candle at both ends, and I still do. But now I'm just energized properly. And so this year, my goal is, when I came into this year, I was like, I want to be more present, because, you know, with cell phones and with Instagram and with social media, and by no means am I like cool, but I have a lot of responsibility. So I have to get back to a lot of people, and I have to make sure that we're like moving, you know, continuing to, we got a lot of balls in there. So it's like, all right, making sure we're taking care of everything. And so for me, a lot of it is literally just putting down the phone. It's not thinking about a bajillion other things and stressing. It's just like being here and enjoying this moment, because I mean, that's truthfully all you have. And it's just nice. It's really relaxing.
I always ask in every episode. So if you listen to some of the episodes, I'm sure after this, now that you had this, you're like, man, that dude did know what the fuck he's doing. I'm going to listen to all these things when I'm driving or on the plane or whatever. But I like to ask, can you please share an experience that you're really thankful that you got to have, but it only happened because you were pursuing your passions? Because I think we got to have pretty unique life experiences, and the things we get excited about aren't promotions through our jobs usually. It's not, you know, getting a bigger paycheck, the biggest commission paycheck I ever got. It's like, it's usually something totally unrelated. You know what I mean? So like for me, I'll say this time, it's the fact that I get to like take this big trip. You know, normally you can't really just take a week-long trip away from your family to California when you live in Wisconsin. Yeah. But I don't make any money in the winter. I have all these connections through skateboarding and through my podcast now. That's like my job, basically. You know, it is my job. But like, this is fun. I'm just like excited to be out here in Santa Cruz visiting the warehouse. I'm taking pictures of, like, you know what I mean, of all the NHL stuff. Like, oh my God, this is the place. This is so sick. And I'm going to go check out the whatever, not Hall of Fame, what do you call it? The history
museum.
Yeah, I'm going to check out the museum after this, and like that's like my job today. So that's my experience that I'm stoked about. But do you got something you can think of?
Yeah, this one's funny, but so I went on a really cool trip. We went to Cyprus, and it was a really rad crew. It was like myself, Haslam was there, Louis Barletta was there, Uyghur was there. It was
what team was this? I'm like,
it was just a bunch
confused.
So I used to skate a lot with Haslam. I mean, I still skate with Haslam a lot.
Okay. We
just bonded on this Dakine trip years ago. Just like, he doesn't party, and I was a year sober at that point, and like, just, he's a funny dude. He's got a ridiculous sense of humor, and we just bonded, you know. And I love that guy. And so I would start traveling with him a little bit, and we went on this really rad trip to Cyprus. And Willow was there, and it was super fun. And so we went on this trip, and we're flying back. And what I didn't realize was that my flight was, when I booked it, I thought it was for like 8:30 p.m. And I was like, that's going to be a pretty tight connection. But what I didn't realize, it was actually 8:30 a.m. the following day. And so I was in Austria. And so what it was, we had a layover. And so got off in Austria, and I was like, well, I have no idea what I'm going to do. I have like, you know. So what I did was, when I was on the plane, I was reading about ice skating. And it was like, you can ice skate outside the rat house. And they would just like freeze it, whatever. It was like this really weird thing. And I hadn't gone ice skating in years. But I was like, that sounds sick. Like, it's all lit up. It was like kind of in wintertime. And so I only had like a sweatshirt because all my bags were checked. I had a sweatshirt. It was super cold. And so I just immediately like got on Hotwire, booked a little quick hotel room, took a cab there or whatever. And then I was like, all right, I got to go over to the rat house. It was like, you could ice skate for another like 30 minutes. But it was so cool. It was like all frozen, and there was like these long pathways and stuff like that. So I just went ice skating alone at night. And it was just a really surreal moment. You know, it was like, what the hell am I doing? And this is so cool that I get to do this because of skateboarding, you know? That was one of those moments where it was like, just take advantage of the opportunities you have. I don't do it that often. I try to get good sleep, like when I'm at street league events and stuff like that. But I definitely, every place that I go, I check concerts, because if there's like a band that I like, which there's almost always someone playing, almost always. And so I'll be like, let's go. And somebody will hop in with me, and I'll go see a rad show. But yeah, it's just take advantage of those, like when it may present itself as an opportunity of like, oh, this sucks. Try to reframe that and be like, well, actually, this is cool. I'm going to enjoy this. How can I walk away from this, you know, thing that may have seemed like it would be crappy, and do something that's rad that I can be like, wow, that's a good memory.
Yeah. Well, you know, life moves so fast. It sucks that you like forget about the opportunities and stuff that are in front of you because you're running to do this, that, or whatever. I was talking to a different guest. This was episode 1 of season 2, Bianca Winter. She's a yoga instructor, and she was talking about how she learned, you know, she was going through a tough time, and she was focusing on self-care, and sleep was like one of them, right? Sleep and spending time by yourself to relax and whatever. And she found that, you know, that stuff is important, right? Self-care is important, but there's more than one way to like do self-care. And one of the other things is going and spending time just having fun with your friends, or going out and doing these experiences. And sometimes that does take away from your sleep, but it's okay if that's like what you're giving it up for. If you're giving it up for work, now you're. But if you're doing something else that is self-care, it's important to like recognize when those opportunities are available. So you kind of just use that as your piece of advice. You're like a mentor, so you got to have lots of advice. So we always end the episodes with a piece of advice from both of us. But I'm like really struggling to have any more advice after like 20 episodes. I'm not that insightful. What advice do you have for everybody listening?
You get one opportunity to do this. Everyone's going to die at some point. And if you live your life in accordance with what other people think you should do, and with what, you know, society tells you should do, you are not going to get the experience, and you will regret it. And so I think my advice is take the time to really get to know who you are and what you're about and what you really care about and what matters, and be comfortable saying, this is who I am. And I think now the world is so much more accepting of that. But at the same time, you know, like I grew up in Pennsylvania, and it's, you know, a relatively conservative place. And I'm not saying politically, I'm just saying be comfortable with your thoughts If your thoughts aren't, the same as your parents, that's okay. But you have to be true to yourself, because otherwise you're going to get to the end of the tunnel and go, I wish I would have done this.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of The Passion Pod. We hope you enjoyed it as much as we did. We'll see you soon.